Is forgiveness possible where pain seems endless? Can what was destroyed in one moment of carelessness ever be rebuilt? A story that will leave no one indifferent. And now please subscribe to my channel, give it a like, and leave a comment. This helps to develop and promote my channel. The weight of silence filled our car as Ethan and I drove home from Dr. Winter's office. Another grief counseling session that left us raw and exposed. 6 months had passed since we lost Sophie, our little girl with golden curls and a laugh that could light up the darkest room. 6 months since that afternoon at my mother's lakeside home in Connecticut. You're still planning to go to her birthday dinner, aren't you? Rebecca finally broke the silence, her voice barely audible over the hum of the engine. I tightened my grip on the steering wheel. I think we should talk about this when we get home. There's nothing to talk about, James. I meant what I said in therapy. The rest of the drive passed in silence. Our house came into view, the swing set still standing in the backyard. Neither of us had found the strength to dismantle it yet. Inside, Rebecca disappeared into the kitchen while I loosened my tie and collapsed onto the couch. Through the window, I could see the branches of the oak tree swaying in the evening breeze. Sophie had loved watching the leaves dance. I found the gift receipt in your wallet, Rebecca said, returning with a glass of water. Her eyes were red-rimmed but dry. The cashmere sweater for your mother. I wasn't hiding it from you. Weren't you? She set the glass down with careful precision. You know how I feel about this. I rubbed my face with my hands. She's still my mother, Beck. And Sophie was our daughter. Her voice cracked on the last word. I looked up at my wife, the woman I'd fallen in love with during our junior year at Hartfield University, whose smile had once been as constant as the sunrise. Now I barely recognized her. Grief had hollowed her out, leaving behind someone whose pain had calcified into something hard and unyielding. It was an accident, I said softly. The fire alarm. 2 minutes, Rebecca cut me off. 2 minutes she left our baby alone by the pool, after promising us she would watch her every second. The security footage had become a torture device. We'd watched it countless times during the investigation. My mother rushing into the house when the alarm sounded. Sophie crawling toward the pool's edge, the small splash. Then my mother's scream when she returned. Her desperate attempts at CPR while on the phone with emergency services. The rescue team took 30 minutes to reach her place, I reminded her. Even if she hadn't left Sophie alone, they might not have. Don't. Rebecca's voice was sharp. Don't play the what-if game. Your mother made a choice. She left our daughter alone near water, after we specifically asked her not to. I swallowed hard. She's punishing herself more than we ever could. Good. The coldness in Rebecca's voice startled me. But that doesn't bring Sophie back. An uncomfortable silence stretched between us. I can't cut her off, I finally said. I won't. Rebecca's eyes met mine, and I saw something there that terrified me. Resolve. Then you need to choose, James. Her or me. Because I cannot, will not, stay married to someone who maintains a relationship with the woman responsible for our daughter's death. In that moment, I felt the ground give way beneath me. I was falling, with nothing to grab onto. You don't mean that, I whispered. I'll be staying at my sister's tonight, Rebecca said, already moving toward the stairs. You have until her birthday dinner next week to decide. As she climbed the stairs to pack, I remained frozen, staring at the family photo on our mantel. The three of us smiling, Sophie held safely between us, oblivious to how fragile happiness could be. Rebecca's absence felt like another death in our home. I wandered from room to room that evening, finally ending up in Sophie's nursery. We'd kept it intact, her crib with the mobile of stars and moons, the bookshelf filled with stories I'd never finish reading to her, the stuffed elephant she'd named Fuff, for reasons only a toddler could understand. I sat in the rocking chair, the wood creaking beneath my weight. The moon cast silver light through the curtains, illuminating Sophie's fingerprints still visible on the window glass. I couldn't bring myself to clean them away. My phone vibrated with a text from my mother. Checking in. Love you. The simple message unleashed a torrent of conflicting emotions. How could I explain to Rebecca that despite everything, I couldn't sever this connection? My mother, Caroline, had raised me alone after my father abandoned us when I was 4. She'd worked 2 jobs to put me through college, had celebrated every achievement and soothed every heartbreak. And now she lived alone in that house by the lake, drowning in her own grief and guilt. The security footage played in my mind again. I'd watched it so many times I could recall every detail. The panic on my mother's face when the alarm sounded, her hesitation at the door as she glanced back at Sophie playing safely on the lawn, her decision to rush inside for what should have been just moments. But the fire alarm, later determined to be faulty wiring, had confused her. By the time she'd checked the kitchen, the living room, and finally found nothing wrong in the upstairs bedroom, those critical moments had passed. The camera captured her horror when she returned to find the floating form in the water. I couldn't sleep that night. When morning came, I called in sick to work and drove the 90 minutes to my mother's house. The lake glittered innocently in the morning sun as I pulled into her driveway. She answered the door in her bathrobe, looking smaller than I remembered. The past 6 months had aged her a decade. Her once vibrant gray eyes were dull, her shoulders permanently hunched as if bearing an invisible weight. "James," she whispered, surprised. "I wasn't expecting you." The house was immaculate, too clean, as if she spent her days scrubbing away at memories. But some things couldn't be removed, like the discolored patch of carpet where she'd laid Sophie after pulling her from the water, performing CPR until her arms gave out. "Rebecca left," I said simply, following her into the kitchen. "She's staying with Andrea." My mother's hands trembled as she prepared coffee. Because of my birthday dinner. Because of everything. We sat at her kitchen table, the silence between us filled with unspoken pain. Through the window, I could see the pool, now covered with a locked safety cover my mother had installed the week after the funeral. Too late. "She wants me to choose," I finally said. "Between you and her." My mother's face crumpled. "Then you choose her, James. You choose your wife." "Mom, no." She reached across the table, her cold fingers wrapping around mine. "I took your daughter from you both. I won't take your marriage too." "It was an accident," I insisted, the words feeling hollow despite their truth. "An accident caused by my negligence." Her voice was steady now, resolute. "I made a choice that day, James. A terrible, thoughtless choice I'll regret until my dying breath." She stood and walked to a drawer, pulling out an envelope. "I've been seeing Dr. Patterson in town. He suggested I write this. A letter to Sophie." Her voice broke slightly as she handed it to me. "And one for you and Rebecca. I was going to give them to you at some point, but maybe now is the time." The sight of my daughter's name in my mother's handwriting made my chest tighten. I slipped the envelope into my pocket, unable to read it yet. "Rebecca needs someone to blame," my mother continued softly. "And she's right to blame me. What she's asking isn't unreasonable, James. She's asking me to cut you out of my life completely." My mother nodded, tears spilling down her lined face. "Sometimes loving someone means letting them go. I've learned that in the hardest way possible." I looked out at the lake again, thinking of Sophie's laughter the first time she'd splashed her feet in its cool waters. That memory now forever tarnished. "I don't know if I can do what she's asking," I admitted. "You can," my mother said with quiet certainty. "And you should." As I drove home that afternoon, my mother's letters sat heavy in my pocket. The sky darkened with approaching rain, matching my mood. I needed to make a decision, but every option before me seemed to lead only to more loss. Rain poured down as I pulled into our driveway, obscuring the world outside my windshield. I sat in the car, listening to the rhythmic drumming on the roof, the letters from my mother still unopened beside me. Finally, gathering my courage, I opened the one addressed to Sophie first.
My precious Sophie, there are no words in any language that can express the depth of my sorrow. I was entrusted with your safety, your beautiful, perfect life, and I failed you in an unforgivable way. Every morning I wake up and for a blessed second I forget what happened. Then it crashes over me anew. I see your smile, hear your little voice calling me Gamma, and feel the ghost of your tiny hand in mine. I don't ask for forgiveness because some things are beyond forgiveness, but I want you to know that in the short time you were here, you brought more joy into this world than many do in a lifetime.
I couldn't continue reading through my tears. I set it aside and opened the second letter, addressed to Rebecca and me. My mother's penmanship was shaky but determined. She wrote about her overwhelming guilt, her sleepless nights, and the therapy she'd started. Then came the part that stopped my breath. She was selling her lakeside home and moving to Oregon to live near her sister. She hadn't wanted to tell me because she knew I would try to talk her out of it.
This isn't just for Rebecca's sake, though I understand her need for distance. It's for me, too. Every corner of this house echoes with Sophie's laughter. Every time I look at that water, I see, I can't stay here, James. And perhaps my leaving will give you both the space to heal your marriage, which is more important now than ever.
By the time I finished reading, darkness had fallen completely. I drove to Andrea's apartment across town, the letters tucked safely in my jacket pocket. When Rebecca opened the door, her face was guarded, but her eyes softened slightly at the sight of my rain-soaked appearance. "Can we talk?" I asked simply. She nodded and led me inside. Andrea, sensing our need for privacy, murmured something about meeting a friend and slipped out. We sat on opposite ends of her sister's small couch, the distance between us both physical and emotional. "I went to see my mother today," I began. Rebecca stiffened. "So you've made your decision." I needed to understand everything before I could decide anything. I handed her both letters. She hesitated before taking them, her hands trembling slightly. I watched her face as she read. The initial resistance, then the slow crumbling of her armor as my mother's words penetrated the walls she had built. When she finished, she placed the letters carefully on the coffee table between us. "She's leaving," Rebecca said softly, not quite a question. I nodded. She made the decision weeks ago, apparently. A long silence stretched between us, filled with the gentle patter of rain against the windows. "I don't know if I can ever forgive her," Rebecca finally said, her voice barely audible. "But I never wanted to force you to choose. I can't bear seeing her, James. It hurts too much." I moved closer to her on the couch, relief flooding through me when she didn't pull away. "What happened to Sophie was the worst thing that will ever happen to us," I said, carefully choosing my words. "And we're each finding our way through this grief differently. I don't blame my mother the way you do, but I understand why you need distance from her." Rebecca's eyes met mine, swimming with tears. "Do you think we can survive this?" "I don't know," I answered honestly, "but I want to try." She reached for my hand, her fingers cold but familiar. I miss her so much it physically hurts. Sometimes I wake up and for a split second I forget. Then it all comes crashing back. "I know," I whispered. "Me too." "Doctor, Winters says we need to find a way forward that honors Sophie's memory without letting grief define us." I squeezed her hand. "My mother will be gone before her birthday. She's already started packing." Rebecca nodded slowly. "I don't want you to lose her, too. That's not fair to you." "What about phone calls?" I suggested tentatively. "Maybe just on holidays at first? And I could visit her in Oregon occasionally?" "I think I could handle that," she said after a moment. "As long as I don't have to see her, at least not yet." We sat together in silence, hands intertwined, both aware that this fragile compromise was just the beginning of a long, difficult road ahead. The rain outside had softened to a gentle drizzle, the storm passing. 3 days later, we scattered Sophie's ashes together at sunrise in the botanical gardens where we used to take her to see the butterflies. My mother wasn't there. That was still too much for Rebecca. But she had sent a small bouquet of forget-me-nots, Sophie's favorite flower. As we watched the ashes blend with the earth beneath the flowering trees, Rebecca leaned against me, her head on my shoulder. "I think she would have liked this spot," she whispered. "She would have tried to eat the dirt," I replied, and we both laughed through our tears, the first genuine laugh we had shared in 6 months. Later that evening, I called my mother to tell her about the ceremony. Rebecca sat beside me on the couch, not participating, but not leaving either. It was a small step, but an important one. Nothing about our future was certain. The pain would never completely disappear. But as we ended the call, and Rebecca rested her head against my chest, I felt something I hadn't experienced in a long time. Not happiness exactly, but the quiet hope that someday we might find our way back to it. "One day at a time," Rebecca murmured, echoing Dr. Winter's frequent refrain. Outside our window, the first stars of evening appeared in the clearing sky, tiny points of light breaking through the darkness. Not enough to dispel it completely, but enough to navigate by. For now, that would have to be sufficient.
Thank you for watching until the end. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to like and subscribe to the channel. There's a lot more interesting content coming soon.